4 years ago, I was an OSCE observer during the presidential elections in Crimea, and the people who picked me up from the airport in that Mesjid, Simferopol, were ethnic Russians, and our translator was telling me the virtues of a number of civil societal organizations in Crimea which were completely against the Crimean Tatar National Mejlis. As Professor Palamarchuk has mentioned, there were this kind of Russian-designed puppet organizations like Milli Fırka and many other, like some religious civil society organizations, some political organizations, etc., etc. And actually, the kind of Northern Caucasization, or whatever you call it. I mean, what Russians had done in the Muslim republics of Northern Caucasus throughout the last 2 decades had already started in Crimea in the last 2 decades. Unfortunately, from my point of view, Kiev was quite ignorant and sometimes quite, how to put it in the right way, not only ignorant but also quite soft to the developments in Crimea, and it was a process which was heating up throughout the last 2 decades. So, the topic of my speech is Crimea in the context of Turco-Ukrainian relations and the Greater Black Sea region, because Crimea itself, not only because of Crimean Tatars, but from the point of view of its geostrategic position, plays a very important role in Turkish foreign policy concerning the region. Of course, I'm a historian, and if you look at the issue from a historical point of view, Crimea has always been, for a long time, the depression word for the Turkish policymakers for the last 2 centuries. While it was a part of the Ottoman Empire, it was considered as a great geography. It was not only the little Crimean peninsula, it was extending from the northwestern end of the empire to the northeastern end of the empire, namely from Balkans to the Caucasus. In a different naming, it meant the northern noble part of the empire, which has enjoyed quite equal imperial privileges as of the Ottoman family as well as its rulers. In short, Crimea for the Ottomans has never been an Egypt, Syria, Benghazi, Albania or Bosnia or anywhere else for the empire during the Ottoman period. It was not only an integral part of the history of the Turco-Muslim heritage, but thanks to its royal family of Gerais, it was the very imperial family of the Genghis lineage, which had the right to rule over the Eurasian Turco-Mongols. In the modern times, the Crimean Tatars immigrated to Turkey during the 19th and 20th centuries had become the leading members of the Turkish political, intellectual and the business elites. Of course, we can give hundreds of names right now, but very architects of the Turkish Republic, very architects of the Ottoman modernization throughout the last quarter of the 19th century, the very leading members of Turkish intelligentsia throughout the 20th century were all Crimean Tatars. Of course, there are many reasons for that, but that's a deep historical debate. We can easily say that Crimean Tatar intellectuals and politicians have been the inspirators of the Turkish Revolution as well, and the ones who were, in real terms, constructors of the Turkish Republic. Of course, the Crimea and Crimean Tatars have always been the very center of the modern Ukrainian-Turkish relations in the post-Cold War times as well, since Ukraine has been recognized as an independent and sovereign entity by the Republic of Turkey in February 1992, the relations between the 2 countries has followed 2 important different streams. The first stream is naturally the one fixed on the axis of the bilateral relations, which has got a number of sub-streams such as tourism, defense cooperation, iron and steel trade, agriculture, energy issues, and many others, as well as the cultural relations, of course. But the second stream is all about Crimea and the Crimean Tatars. Neither Yanukovych, nor Yushchenko, nor Kuchma, or nor Kravchuk has visited Turkey without the support of the Crimean Tatar diaspora support, or in the absence of the very, for us, legendary Turco-Tatar dissident Mustafa Cemiliev. Zhivnev has accompanied all Ukrainian leaders visiting Turkey since 1992 very humbly, despite his legendary distant activities within the Soviet Union, which were very well known in the West as well as in Turkey. I remember from my own childhood in 1970s, first half of 1970s, many people were organizing hunger strikes for the release of Mustafa Cemil from Soviet bloc, etc. So he was very well known already at the end of the Cold War, during the Cold War as well in Turkey. Some experts might call that as the ethnic dimension of foreign policy. Some others call it as the realist perspective. However, Cemil's existence standing next to the Ukrainian presidents visiting Turkey meant two important things for the Turkish policymakers as well as the Turkish public. First, his existence has given a message to the Turkish policy circles, Turkish policy-making circles, that Ukraine is friendly towards her Turkic and Muslim minority population, which was quite important, and given the experience of Turkey with Bulgaria in 1989, that was a very, very important thing. Let me remind you, between 1986 and 89, there was a major drive in the Bulgarian government against its Turkish and the Muslim minority to change their names and their history, etc., and even the religion. So for Turkey, it was a very important criteria for any strategic partner, for any neighbor, how do they treat their Turkish or Muslim minorities, and it was an important pillar of their Turkish policymakers' decision about how to approach that country. Secondly, for the rest of the Turkish population and the diaspora confederations, the existence of Cemil basically meant that Ukraine does not claim the proud heritage of the Soviet oppression of the peoples of Eurasia. Namely, the Crimean Tatars would not be the subject to Soviet-style double standards, and they would have a chance to re-establish their lives in their motherland thanks to this quite sympathetic approach from Kiev. So, it would not be terribly wrong to claim that Mr. Cemil has been one of the architects of the post-Cold War Turco-Ukrainian relations within the last 20 years. His guidance and leadership, I should say, is still greatly admired and respected among the Turkish policy-making circles as well as Turkish civil society. However, Crimea is not only a great strategic and historical spot for the Turks from the point of view of these bilateral relations. On the contrary, Crimea can be marked as the center of Turkish interest into a greater strategic, geostrategic region, which is called as the Greater Black Sea region in many different publications. For the 2 decades following the disintegration of the former Soviet Union, this Greater Black Sea region has been a spot for the so-called many frozen conflicts. Turkey and a number of other countries have always been in search for developing regional platforms for curing the problems of this region, apart from problems in Abkhazia, Ossetia, Nagorno-Karabakh, Chechnya, and Transnistria. Now, Crimea has become one of the problem regions that Turkey has to develop policies concerning. Different from all other problem areas or frozen conflicts until now, Crimea problem has many side effects for the new Turkish foreign policy. Previously, even including the membership issues of Ukraine and Georgia to the NATO and the opening of the Black Sea region to the United States and NATO security plannings, Turkey has been a faithful supporter of the Montreux regime and a supporter of a close cooperation with the Russian Federation for the last 2 decades. As you know, throughout the 1990s, second half of the 1990s and first half of the 2000s, the United States and NATO had tried quite hard, especially with Bulgaria and Romania after 2004, to develop a new security regime in the Black Sea, and Turkey has always opposed that, not openly declaring its opposition, but in a very diplomatic way. Throughout 1990s, many US and NATO documents called Black Sea region as a gray zone or non-covered or non-protected place. Turkish policymakers have difficulties in understanding this approach while thinking that Black Sea, thanks to the Turkish and the Russian Black Sea navies, as the safest waters of the world. However, in 2008 crisis, during the 2008 crisis, Georgia crisis. The meaning of this have been better understood by the Turks, while the United States ships have forced the Turkish straits during the Georgian-Russian conflict over Ossetia. Although Turkish straits have been subject to similar challenges during the Second World War and throughout the Cold War, that was the biggest challenge in the post-Cold War era, 2008. Throughout the 1990s and the first 5 years of the new millennium, both NATO and US were in constant search for Black Sea ports to serve their aims in the region, basically creating a new security network. Bulgarian port of Varna or Romanian port of Constanța have been the first targets in 2004, 5 and 6. However, Turkey has persistently opposed to open the Turkish straits and the doors of the Black Sea to these non-literal powers and organizations by developing a mutual understanding with the Russian Federation. Turkey has been loyal to her position until very recently, until the so-called annexation of Crimea by the Russian Federation. This annexation or invasion has completely destroyed the Turkish reading of the balance of powers in the greater Black Sea region, as well as the mutual Turco-Russian cooperation over the Black Sea security issues. We can easily say that Crimea will be another frozen conflict for the upcoming decades, which would seriously overshape Turco-Russian relations in the greater Black Sea region. So by now, the traditional Black Sea security structure is ended. So it is about the time to think about a new security structure in the Black Sea after 2 decades of a traditional Black Sea security system. There will be a new structure in the making in this following decade. It's difficult to, of course, argue that despite the annexation of Crimea, Russia will gain a better position. It's not possible to say that, no, but probably just the opposite. Russian general strategic standing will be definitely harmed and left quite disadvantaged in this new atmosphere, where there is a widespread consensus on the future of the region as a new region to be integrated into global and regional security networks. The new security architecture, together with Turkey's standing in the regional, for example, the Middle East and the global problems, would definitely force Turkey to take quite firm actions and positions which would stand against the Russian projections about the region and foreign affairs. So we cannot, as the question in the morning session, we cannot say that we can, Turkey or any other international actor or organization can take firm actions and direct actions against this annexation or against the aggression in eastern Ukraine, but still this is the end of the traditional 2-decade-long balance of power after the Cold War, and it is the very beginning of the creation of a new security architecture in the Black Sea region. Thank you very much.